highly played by a number of players. But I've given you three options I think can work very well. We should now, of course, discuss rage powers for barbarians, but again, for the purpose of this article, I shall keep this fairly simple. Having looked over the choices that are available, my preferred favourite from the starting point is Animal Fury. But before we discuss it, I just want to remind you, give you a recap of what you actually gain for how many times you can actually rage. Now, you can rage for a number of times per day, 4 plus your con bonus. Now, when we spoke earlier, we discussed about where you should place the stats. You can see why I placed con quite high, not only for the hit points, but of course it increases the number of rounds per day that you can actually rage. So that's quite significant. When you're raging, you do gain also some interesting advantages. You get a +4 morale bonus to strength and con, which is phenomenal. A +2 morale bonus to saves, which again is very significant when we talk about saving throws. But you do take a -2 to armour class, and given already what we've already said about armour class, it's probably a penalty that you'd quite happily accept because you've gone in a different direction, because you've thought about the build process that you want to achieve. Now let's come back to Animal Fury for a moment, and I'll explain why I chose it to be my preferred favourite at the beginning. It's a brilliant ability, allowing you to, as a full round action, to not only use your weapon of preferred choice, but also to bite someone. And I love that. I think that's a lot of fun. So it really shows the ferocity. It's like the Mike Tyson ripping off someone's ear. It's great. So it's a weapon of choice, slice and bite. I just think that's a lot of fun, and it's very much in fitting with the Barbarian. But the reality behind, of course, the choice is it gives you 2 potential attacks, albeit at the fact that the second attack will be at -5. But if you have ploughed your eggs into the route of high strength here, chances are you'll still have probably even a slight bonus in the ability to use that second attack, which is very nice and very significant at low level. The bites can do D4 plus half your strength. So again, you can see the reasons why I've sort of favoured the strength build generally, and why I've chosen this particular rage power. There are many others that will come into play later on, and that's preferential choice. It's what you would like to do. I'm giving you my preferred opinion on what I would do as a setup to the particular character to get as maximum amount of fun out of it. Finally, let's take a look at feats in general and discuss those, and discuss some of the feats that you can consider taking. I've listed about 7 or 8 feats actually that I think are viable options for a Barbarian to take. And again, for the purposes of this, not knowing which race people are going to play, I'm just going to just put them out there in an order that I think is pretty good. The first 3, you could argue, you could debate which way you want to go with them, however you like, but they're my preferred 3, the first 3. And those are Weapon Focus, Power Attack and Cleave are my preferred 3 feats to start with. Weapon Focus will give you a +1 bonus. Obviously, Power Attack is the beginning prelude to gaining Cleave, which again gives you more options if you're taking a full round attack, which can be significant when you think about Animal Fury as well, because now if you do a full round attack and you have Cleave, you have the option, of course, to being able to hit someone, and if someone's standing adjacent to them, attempt to hit them as well, and you've still got your animal bite in there as well, so it's 3 possible attacks. So that's quite tasty. But it depends on the build. If you're starting off with a human, you could start with Power Attack and Cleave. If you're starting off with a dwarf or the half-orc, I'd actually think about going a slightly different route and taking the Weapon Focus, and probably put the focus, if I'm being honest, in Falchion. We'll talk about that in just a moment. The other feats well worth considering, and certainly viable options, would be things like Iron Will, and then Greater Iron Will. Toughness, to improve the hit points even further still for fun, because you're going to need as many as you can get, as your armour class isn't going to be as good as the straight fighters. And of course, later on, when you reach 4th level onwards, you have a number of choices. Weapon specialisation certainly stands out as a really good one when you have to put all your eggs in one fighter basket. But those are a few feats I would personally consider. And now, in a moment, we'll talk about the weapons. And let's now look at the weapons that the Barbarian has access to. Of course, you have access to every weapon in the game. But for the purposes of this article, what we'll do is focus on what is going to be your most primary weapon that you will want to use, that you're going to put your eggs in to that basket. For me, there are 3 that really stand out. And again, there are others that you could debate. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to give you the 3 that are quite traditional, quite fun, I hope the final one may surprise a few people who don't normally think this way. The first one, of course, is the traditional Great Axe. Nothing better than seeing a Barbarian wielding a Great Axe. Best damage potential in the game if it criticals, and frightening to see an opponent come at you with a Great Axe, that's for sure. Of course, there's the Great Sword, another lovely choice with a slightly better threat range. But my preferred favourite out of all of them, the Falchion, because its threat range is fantastic and wielded two-handed. In your hands, it could be a very lethal weapon indeed. Threat range for the Falchion is 18, 19 and 20 in Pathfinder, and what I like about it is when you combine it with some of the other things that you can do, it really stands out. So let's look at a few of those things you can do. Let's take a few assumptions. If we were using point buy, it's not inconceivable to think that somebody could have a 20 strength here. That's possible. By definition, let us assume that they're playing one of the two, out of the three races I've given. I'm not going to pick human, I'm just going to assume for this article, for the moment, that they're going to play either the dwarf or the half-orc. And they've taken weapon focus. Your first level character with +1 to hit, +5 for your strength, +1 for weapon focus. You start with +7 to hit. Pretty awesome. You do 2d4 plus 7 damage. 5 halved round down, so you do 7 damage. 2d4 plus 7, that's very nice. Of course, if you go into rage mode, things get pretty sick, because now you're going to improve your strength by +4 points and your con, but we'll talk about the strength aspect here, and of course your strength will now go up to 24. If you like, basically your to hit goes up by 2 points, so now you're at +9 at first level, and you're also able, of course, to do more damage. It goes +7, which halved is 3.5 round down, which means you're now doing +10, so that's 2d4 plus 10, still with the threat range as it is. That's a pretty awesome build. Plus, of course, you've got the Animal Fury as well as another nice touch. Now, if you're playing the human, you could, of course, argue that you might take power and attack and cleave, looking for more options on the battlefield to plough the road, as I say in my games. But again, that's an argument for another time. But for the purpose of this article, I will now bring it to a close and submit my guide for building barbarians in the Pathfinder game. I've been Sean Connors, this has been Outsiders. Take care of yourselves and happy gaming.